Hi, it's Katrina. Today we are venturing beneath the surface, exploring the chilling realms of hidden secrets under the ice. Ancient forests perfectly preserved might be waiting to be discovered. Lost civilizations frozen in time could be hiding just beneath our feet. But the ice holds more than just history. There are strange viruses lurking and forgotten technology locked away. What else might be waiting to be unearthed? Let's go find out.
Antarctica's ancient rainforest.
What if I told you that in Antarctica, underneath layers of ice and history, there's an ancient rainforest? Would you believe me? It's true. Antarctica has long been a place for the brave. American Captain John Davis is credited with the first documented landing in 1821. But these days, it's not adventurers, but scientists who brave the cold to study the planet's mysteries. Climate change, microorganisms, endangered animals, and rare plant species, to name a few.
Modern Antarctica is almost uninhabitable, with only about 1,000 to 5,000 people living there in secure research stations. They study the environment, which can only sustain very few plants today. However, it wasn't always like this. Research now suggests that the icy continent once had a tropical rainforest filled with exotic plants. Dr. Johann Klages and his team from the Alfred Wegener Institute in Germany went to Antarctica in 2020, not for the ice, but to uncover its hidden past. In the science journal Nature's documentary called An Ancient Antarctic Rainforest, they shared their amazing find. Using a special drill, they dug 100 feet into the sea floor and discovered evidence of a lush ancient rainforest. What kinds of creatures do you think once lived here? Dr. Klages explained that 90 million years ago, Antarctica was free of ice and was likely teeming with life. They found that the yearly average temperature back then was around 54 degrees Fahrenheit. And while this might not sound all that hot, it was just warm enough to create a swampy rainforest environment. This is a big deal. Even Joe Rogan got in on the discovery when he discussed these new findings on his podcast. You know, if Rogan is talking about it, it's a big deal.
When they dug into the ice, the team brought up 4 samples that contained something unusual. So they decided to scan it with a CT scanner. And guess what they found? The scans revealed sandstone with a network of fossil roots, perfectly preserved. Dr. Klages said it was like drilling into a modern forest, revealing both thin and thick roots that were intertwined.
Further analysis of fossilized pollen and spores showed that Antarctica once had warm temperatures similar to northern Italy. Klages also suggested that dinosaurs and insects likely lived there, enduring long periods of darkness due to the polar night. Back then, Earth was at its hottest, with carbon dioxide levels much higher than today. This discovery is crucial for understanding what our planet might look like with current climate changes. I guess we'll find out soon enough.
So, while today's Antarctica is a frozen, inhospitable place, it once thrived as a lush green rainforest. Discoveries like this help scientists predict and prepare for the impacts of climate change, so get ready. Shout out time! I want to give a huge thank you to Sienna for the generous super thanks. It really means a lot. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button for more videos like this.
Hidden impact crater.
Imagine discovering a hidden impact crater as big as Ohio. Well, that is exactly what scientists found in Antarctica. Researchers believe that the crater was formed by a space rock that caused the greatest mass extinction on Earth 250 million years ago. This crater, buried beneath a half-mile of ice, is more than twice as big as the one that contributed to the demise of the dinosaurs.
So, how did they find this colossal crater? Researchers used NASA's GRACE satellites to measure gravity differences across the icy landscape in 2006. Amazingly, these satellites detected a dense mass concentration, known as a mascon, which hinted at an impact site. Professor Ralph von Fries, who teaches geological sciences at Ohio State University, said that if he saw the same mascon signal on the moon, he would expect to see a crater around it. When researchers overlaid airborne radar images, they spotted a 300-mile-wide circular ridge beneath the ice. This mascon fit perfectly inside the circle, confirming the presence of the crater.
But what's so important about this crater? The crater, located in the Wilkes Land region of East Antarctica, south of Australia, might have triggered the breakup of the ancient Gondwana supercontinent. Remember that?
It was this massive landmass that once encompassed South America, Antarctica, Africa, Arabia, Zealandia, and the Indian subcontinent. But when it was hit by a meteor millions of years ago, everything changed. The impact resulted in the breakup of this supercontinent, eventually pushing Australia northward. Von Fries also noted that the Wilkes Land impact is far larger than the impact that supposedly killed the dinosaurs. Wrap your head around that. It's hard to believe. But did this impact really cause the Permian-Triassic extinction? This extinction event wiped out most life on land and in the oceans, setting the stage for dinosaurs to dominate the planet. While some scientists have blamed volcanic activity or other factors, the discovery of this massive crater supports the theory that a meteorite was involved. This newfound crater is over twice the size of the Chicxulub crater in the Yucatan Peninsula, which has been linked to the extinction of the dinosaurs. The Chicxulub meteor was about 6 miles wide, while the Wilkes Land meteor could have been up to 30 miles wide.
The discovery was announced by postdoctoral researcher Laramie Potts and was funded by NASA and the National Science Foundation. It was initially presented at the American Geophysical Union Joint Assembly meeting in Baltimore. However, further work is needed to confirm the finding. One way to verify it would be to collect rock samples from the crater and analyze their structure to see if they match what would be expected from such a colossal impact. It's unclear, though, if any such tests have been done.
Zombie viruses.
A zombie virus sounds like it would turn you into an undead monster, so it's no wonder why people were freaking out when ancient zombie viruses were found within the melting permafrost of the Arctic. It sounds like the plot of a sci-fi movie, but scientists are genuinely worried that these viruses could trigger a global health emergency. No, they won't turn you into zombies, but they may pose a threat in the near future.
Geneticist Jean-Michel Claverie from Aix-Marseille University warns that this threat is very real. Claverie told The Guardian that we need to be prepared to deal with these viruses before they wreak havoc on our immune systems. But what exactly are zombie viruses? So-called Methuselah microbes, or zombie viruses, have been frozen in the permafrost for tens of thousands of years. The permafrost covers nearly 20% of the Earth's northern hemisphere and is a perfect freezer, cold, dark, and oxygen-free. Claverie says that someone could put yogurt in permafrost and it would still be edible 50,000 years later. So these viruses could date back a million years, way before humans ever existed.
Our immune systems today have never encountered these ancient viruses, which means we haven't built up a natural immunity to them. Claverie proposed the possibility, however unlikely, of a virus that once infected Neanderthals making a comeback and infecting us. It's like opening a Pandora's box full of prehistoric pathogens.
So, what are scientists doing to prepare for one of these zombie virus pandemics? Experts are currently collaborating with the University of the Arctic to set up a monitoring network. This network aims to identify any diseases caused by these ancient microorganisms early on. The plan includes quarantine facilities and medical services to contain any outbreaks, ensuring that contagious patients can't spread diseases beyond the region. But let's be honest, what are the chances of a new pandemic? Well, considering how we just dealt with an unexpected pandemic starting in 2020, it's not all that unlikely. Virologists believe that there is a legitimate risk of these zombie viruses springing back to life, infecting anyone who might be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Scientists don't really know what viruses could be hiding out in the permafrost, but there is a real risk that one of them may be capable of triggering an outbreak of a disease that's never been dealt with before.
The idea of an ancient form of polio or another virus emerging isn't just a wild theory. It's a possibility that scientists are taking extremely seriously. So make sure you're washing your hands and stay as far away from permafrost as you can, because you never know what could be beneath the surface, just waiting to infect you.
Canadian treasures.
The ice in a remote part of northern Canada is hiding a treasure trove of ancient artifacts. But just what was concealed beneath the surface?
In Mount Edziza Provincial Park, melting ice has revealed items dating back 7,000 years. belonging to the Tahltan First Nations. But who are the Tahltan, you may be asking? They are an indigenous group that is native to Canada. Historically, the Tahltan were semi-nomadic. They relied on fishing, hunting, and gathering for food. They are also known for their rich cultural heritage, which includes intricate beadwork, storytelling, and a deep spiritual connection to the land. Despite the challenges of colonization and modern development, the Tahltan people continue to preserve their cultural practices today.
Mount Edziza, a volcano in northwestern British Columbia, has been a vital hunting ground for the Tahltan people for millennia. And thanks to these discoveries, archaeologists have been learning more about life here since around 5000 BC. That's a really long time ago.
Beneath the ice, researchers found a variety of fascinating items like bone tools, antler ice picks, birch bark containers, walking sticks, and even a stitched boot. Among these treasures were tools made from obsidian, a shiny black glass formed by lava. Lead archaeologist Duncan McLaren was amazed at the sheer number of artifacts, especially the well-preserved organic materials like leather, wood, and bone. These things usually just tend to disintegrate and don't stick around very long for archaeologists to find. So why were these objects so well preserved? Their remote location played a key role in keeping these artifacts safe. As David Karn from the Ministry of Environment said, the low number of visitors to the area helps protect and preserve these ancient relics. Over 9 patches of ice, archaeologists recovered 56 objects. Carbon dating helped them determine the age and use of these tools. What researchers found particularly interesting were 2 bark containers, both dating back 2,000 years. One of them had detailed stitching, and the other was reinforced with sticks to carry heavy loads.
But what makes these finds so significant? One of the standout discoveries was a 5,000-year-old antler ice pick, or Ede Tahltan. Even though it was partially broken, it clearly showed signs of intentional sharpening and shaping for easy use.
Another remarkable find was the remains of a moccasin-like boot with intricate stitching, proving that early Tahltan hunters created sophisticated items to survive the harsh climate. What's crazy is that the design of this boot hasn't changed much over the years. Recent years of low snowpack in the region have caused the ice to thaw, revealing these ancient treasures. McLaren's team began their excavation in July of 2019 after securing funding for over 5 years. Now their focus is on studying and preserving these fragile items. Currently housed in a climate-controlled provincial museum, there are plans to establish a museum in Tahltan territory for safe storage.
The research team collaborated with several organizations, including the Obsidian Discoveries Tahltan Tene Mehodihi Youth Group Hike. Whew, mouthful, I know. This educational program helps Tahltan youth learn about their history through hands-on experiences. The findings shed light on the archaeological and cultural significance of Mount Edziza Park. Have you been, or do you want to go? Let us know in the comments.
Mummies with copper masks.
Why were mummies wearing copper masks buried in shallow graves beneath the ice and permafrost of Siberia? And why in the world were their skulls smashed in? Russian archaeologists are currently working to unravel these mysteries at Zelenyi Yar, a site full of secrets that have been concealed for centuries.
So, what's the deal with these mummies? The ancient bodies found in 34 graves have puzzled scientists since their discovery over 20 years ago. They were nearly perfectly preserved, thanks to the region's cold temperatures and the copper masks they wore. But what purpose did wearing copper masks serve? Well, they likely prevented oxidation, keeping the mummies in good condition. Did whoever buried these people know this? Unfortunately, researchers don't have all the answers. Along with the bodies, researchers uncovered 11th century bronze bowls from Persia, an iron hatchet, an iron combat knife, a silver medallion, and bronze figurines. These discoveries suggest that Zelenyi Yar was once a bustling trade crossroads during medieval times. But why would these Siberian mummies have items from so far away, like Persia, which is 3,700 miles to the southwest? It indicates that extensive trade networks existed, connecting distant lands in unexpected ways. Perhaps the most chilling discovery for researchers was that many of the mummies had their skulls smashed in, Natalia Fyodorova from the Russian Academy of Sciences believes that this was done soon after death to protect the living from mysterious spells. These spells were believed to emanate from the deceased, which scared the bejesus out of ancient people. This practice of smashing skulls echoes the vampire graves found in Bulgaria, where similar rituals were performed to keep the dead from rising. All the mummies, both adults and children, were buried with their feet pointing toward the Gorny Pului River. They were also wrapped in furs from animals like reindeer, wolverines, bear, or beavers. But what does this mean for researchers? They believe that this hints at a rich cultural practice involving animal symbolism, and perhaps beliefs in an afterlife connected to nature. Excavation at the site began in 1997, but paused just a few years later in 2002 due to local objections. Eventually, though, the work resumed, providing more insights into these mysterious Siberian burials. The frozen dinosaur. Imagine stumbling upon the perfectly preserved remains of a dinosaur that lived 110 million years ago. That's exactly what happened for workers during a mining operation in Alberta, Canada in 2011. This creature looks like a mix between an alligator and a giant turtle, with sharp plates covering its shell. But why didn't this dino become bones like the rest of its family and friends? The dinosaur was identified as a nodosaur, called Borealopelta mark-micheli. This massive herbivore, weighing over a ton, roamed the ancient lands covered in impressive armored plates. After its death, the dino ended up in an ancient sea. It somehow got flipped onto its back and couldn't turn itself over, so eventually it became encased in mud. Have you ever seen a turtle try and flip over? Usually they can do it after some trial and error, but imagine a turtle that weighs 1 ton trying to correct itself. It would have been nearly impossible. The fact that the Borealopelta fell into the water likely only complicated things further. In that muddy tomb, the dinosaur was preserved so well that even its skin, bones, and stomach contents remained intact. Finding a dinosaur with such well-preserved features is extraordinarily rare. The fossil was unveiled at the Royal Tyrrell Museum of Paleontology in 2017, after a painstaking 6-year process of removing it from the surrounding rock. This meticulous work revealed not just the dino's impressive armor, but also detailed insights into its diet and environment. So what did scientists learn about the creature's final meal? Apparently, this giant animal was a picky eater. Now this might sound off topic, but it will make sense once I'm done. Did you know that pandas are fully capable of eating and digesting meat, and yet they choose to eat bamboo 99% of the time? This dinosaur was similar. It could have eaten anything it wanted, but it primarily stuck to ferns. It preferred the soft leaves of specific ferns, avoiding other common plants like conifers. The preserved stomach contents were so detailed that researchers could see individual leaf cells and stomata, the tiny pores plants use to take in carbon dioxide. The presence of charcoal in its stomach suggests that it grazed in areas that were recently affected by wildfires, feeding on the lush green growth that follows. Maybe the dino liked the smoky taste it gave the leaves. But how did such a massive creature thrive on a plant-based diet? And what other clues can its stomach contents reveal about its surroundings? These are questions that researchers are trying to answer right now. From its armored plates to its last meal, this dinosaur, in a way, has allowed scientists to bring the ancient world back to life. Giant slingshots? Slingshots big enough for a giant to wield were found in Norway. At least that's what researchers initially believed. In reality, the objects turned out to be something much more exciting. In August of 2011, during a significant melt in Norway's Landbreen ice patch, Lars Bilo and his team were surveying the upper edge of the ice. But unexpectedly, they began finding strange artifacts. Bits of textiles, leather, and other unusual objects, things you'd usually find at a hunting site. And while the team documented the finds, Lars and his colleague Reidar ventured further into the landscape. In the dense fog, they stumbled upon a large wooden object resembling a giant slingshot, measuring over 3 feet long. There was a hole cut out of the handle, and knife marks were visible along the object. The mystery only deepened as they found another similar artifact, but this one was bigger, double the size of the first one. It was also a little more slender and was missing the hole in the handle. And just as they were pondering over these objects, the fog lifted, revealing a large depression in the mountain ridge, previously covered in snow and ice. Now, clearly visible, the ground was littered with artifacts. So Lars made an urgent call to his team. Over the following days, the team worked tirelessly to recover as many artifacts as possible before the snow returned. They found evidence of an ancient mountain pass, including iron horseshoes, cairns, and horse dung, suggesting that pack horses had previously traveled through the area. However, the two large wooden objects, which were initially identified as slingshots, were too big for their boxes. The team had to find another way to transport them. And how do you think they did it? They just strapped them to Rydar's backpack and carefully walked them down the mountain. So what exactly were these mysterious wooden artifacts? A local expert named Jacob identified them as tang. Isn't tang that orange-flavored powder you mix with water that every grandma has on the top of their fridge? Well, yes, but that's not what Jacob was talking about. According to him, these things were used to strap down loads on horse-drawn hay sledges. The tangs worked by placing the end with the hole at the front of the sledge, pulling a rope underneath and tightening it to strap down the load. Surprisingly, these tools were similar to those used locally until the 1950s. But here's the twist. When the objects were radiocarbon dated, one of them was found to be from around 400 AD, during the Iron Age. This was shocking because it meant that Iron Age people traveled through these high mountains in the winter, bringing horses and sleds along for the journey. They even discovered Iron Age skis, confirming winter travel at high altitudes. So what were these ancient people transporting on their sleds at such altitudes during the coldest months of the year? What could have possibly been so important to make these people risk their lives on the snow and ice-covered mountain? And why were the tangs left behind? These questions remain unanswered, suggesting that more secrets may still lie hidden in the ice. Inca sacrificed. High up on the icy peak of a 20,000-foot volcano, scientists found a rather grim discovery: the frozen mummified remains of 3 children. These kids did not simply hike up the mountain for fun. In fact, before their deaths, these Inca children weren't having any fun at all. They were found on Yuyayacu volcano in Argentina. But who were they? And what's their story? These young Incas, discovered over 500 years after their deaths, were likely part of a ritual sacrifice. The oldest of the group, a 13-year-old girl known as the Ice Maiden, was accompanied by a 4-year-old girl and a 5-year-old boy. Children who were chosen for sacrifice were typically the sons and daughters of local rulers and nobles. They were usually taken thousands of miles away from their home to the city of Cusco, the capital of the Inca Empire. Once they arrived, they were forced to undergo important purification rituals, and from there, the children were sent to the peaks of tall mountaintops to be sacrificed. It's believed that dying as a sacrifice was seen as a great honor to the Inca. According to traditional Inca belief, children who were sacrificed in this way never truly died. Instead, their spirits watched over the land and their families from their perches on the mountaintop. So what stood out to researchers about this discovery? By analyzing hair samples from the mummies, scientists determined the children's diet and substance use. They discovered that these children were drugged. Researchers found that these children consumed increasing amounts of coca leaf and corn beer known as chicha up to a year before their sacrifice. The use of coca and chicha spiked significantly in the final months, especially for the Ice Maiden. But why? The combination of coca, which contains cocaine, and chicha likely sedated the children. Andrew Wilson, an archaeologist at the University of Bradford, explained that the eldest was probably heavily sedated by the point at which she succumbs to death. This sedation, along with the freezing high altitude, likely contributed to their deaths without any signs of direct violence. So how did their final year look? Researchers found that initially the children's diets shifted to include more meat and corn, suggesting they were chosen for sacrifice and were treated to a high-status lifestyle. It's believed that they were then taken to Cusco, where they lived for a while under the care of priestesses, brewing chicha and weaving textiles. During their final 6 months, a ritual hair-cutting ceremony took place. This event marked a notable rise in coca consumption for the children, and in their last few weeks, researchers found a sharp increase in both coca and chicha intake, likely as the children made the grueling journey from Cusco to the top of the volcano. The detailed analysis of these mummified remains offers a glimpse into Inca rituals and the role of coca and chicha in their culture. It might sound strange, but finding traces of these substances wasn't all that surprising to researchers. Apparently, these were both common features of Andean culture. However, the level of detail in this study was very fascinating. It helped explain why the ice maiden consumed so much chicha in her last months and what this indicated about her life. Hidden mountain range. Let's travel back to Antarctica and talk about one of the more unique things you'll find there. Spanning a whopping 750 miles, there is a whole mountain range that's buried beneath the continent's ice and snow called the Gamburtsev Subglacial Mountains. Given their location, these peaks have hardly been explored. So, what could they be hiding? The range was first discovered in 1958 by the Third Soviet Antarctic Expedition. It's even named after geophysicist Grigory A. Gamburtsev, who was part of the team that found the mountains. What an honor that must have been. But for 50 years, it was a mystery as to how these things formed. However, in 2008, researchers think they figured it out. From 2007 to 2009, during the International Polar Year, scientists from 7 nations analyzed the mountains buried over a mile beneath the Antarctic ice using specialist radar equipment. Their primary goal was to learn more about the origins of the Gamburtsevs. And they accomplished just that. They discovered that the East Antarctic Rift System is just like the famous East African Rift System. If you didn't already know, a rift system is a large crack or a series of cracks in the Earth's crust where the land is being pulled apart. Think of it like a giant seam in the planet's surface. They form when tectonic plates move away from each other. This movement then creates tension that causes the crust to stretch and thin out, eventually cracking and forming a rift. This process often leads to volcanic activity and the formation of valleys or basins. Over time, these areas can fill with water, creating lakes. And it just so happens that the East Antarctic Rift System contains the largest subglacial lakes on the continent. When scientists looked over their data, they found that over the past billion years, a thick crustal root formed under these mountains and the rift system. But what does that mean? They found roots, like plant roots, under the mountains? No, not at all. The crustal root the scientists were referring to is a rift in the Earth that stretches 3,000 kilometers all the way to India. Now that's a big crack. Before life existed, continents collided, creating the original mountains of Antarctica and this crustal root. Between 250 million and 100 million years ago, during the dinosaur era, the mountains eroded. Then the Gondwana supercontinent that I told you about earlier split apart, warming the root. By that, I mean that magma and hot gases likely leaked up into this tiny channel. This warming caused the mountains to rise up again. This time, though, they were preserved under a massive ice sheet as big as Canada. Glaciers and rivers carved deep valleys, forcing the peaks to rise and creating a landscape similar to the Alps in Europe. Our planet is capable of some pretty crazy stuff. The next steps in this discovery will involve drilling through the ice into the mountains themselves to obtain the first ever rock samples from the range. As Robin Bell from Columbia University said in her own words, "We have samples of the moon, but still none from the Gamburtsevs. And who knows what else could be hiding under the ice? Just imagine the possibilities. Ruins of a never-before-seen civilization, alien spaceships, creatures we've never heard of. Nothing is off limits." Message in a bottle. Have you ever dreamed of finding a secret message in a bottle? If so, you're going to love this story. Let me transport you to the frozen wilderness of the Canadian Arctic over 50 years ago. American glaciologist Paul T. Walker was there, living the life of exploration. But he discovered something shocking during his travels. So, on July 10th, 1959, Walker left behind a special message tucked into a bottle and carefully concealed under a pile of rocks. But exactly what did he write in his message? Walker's note detailed the exact distance from a cairn, a pile of rocks used as a landmark, to the edge of a glacier. They were about 51 meters apart. He hoped that someone would find his message and take a new measurement at a later time, and then send those results to his lab at Ohio State University. Sadly, though, Walker suffered a stroke just weeks after leaving the note. He passed away a few months later. Now, let's fast forward 54 years to a modern adventure. In the summer of 2013, Dr. Warwick Vincent, director of the Center for Northern Studies at Laval University, and his colleague were exploring this remote Arctic region. Can you guess what they found? Yep, they found Walker's message in a bottle. This discovery gave Vincent goosebumps. So what happened next? Well, Vincent wanted to honor Walker's request. He and his partner measured the distance to the glacier just as Walker had done years earlier, and what they discovered shocked them. They found that the glacier had retreated about 71 meters since 1959. That's pretty far in such a short amount of time. This significant retreat revealed the effects of global warming, even in one of the coldest coastal zones on Earth. But is this surprising? Not really. Glacial retreat due to global warming has been well documented. However, what makes this discovery special is its location. Northern Ellesmere Island has one of the world's coldest coastal climates, comparable to coastal Antarctica. So finding such noticeable glacial retreat in this extremely cold area is particularly striking. Researchers say that Walker's message in a bottle is more than just a note from the past. It's a wake-up call. It reminds us of how quickly our global climate is changing. Despite the Arctic's extreme cold, even these glaciers are melting. Thanks for watching. What were you most surprised to find buried under the ice? Let me know in the comments below.
Be sure to hit that subscribe button and stick around for an older video you might have missed.
The cold bone dinosaur. Scientists discovered the remains of a mysterious dinosaur underneath the ice of Greenland. The dinosaur is now the first of its kind known to have lived in Greenland some 214 million years ago during the Triassic period. This beast walked on two legs, ate plants, and it was of a medium size in comparison to other dinosaurs. It had both a long neck and teeth like serrated needles. And although it was pretty basic and not too out of the ordinary in the world of dinosaurs, it would evolve into something very special. This dinosaur, named Cold Bone in the Inuit language, was an early ancestor of some of the largest dinosaurs that would ever exist, the sauropods. The discovery of the dinosaur's bones go back to 1994. Harvard University paleontologists uncovered two skulls in the Jameson Land Basin in eastern Greenland. At first, they thought the skulls belonged to a type of Platosaurus, a dinosaur found in Germany and France. But that didn't turn out to be true. With newer technology, researchers were recently able to see that this is its very own species, something completely new. Additionally, the researchers found one skull from a juvenile and one from an adult, which meant they were able to see how the animal grew. Right now, this is the only distinct Greenlandic dinosaur species. Sauropods, just like it, would end up living for nearly 150 million years before going extinct. Much later down the evolutionary line, the Titanosaurus appeared, the largest sauropod to ever exist, standing over 40 feet long. Lost Viking Highway. In Norway, archaeologist Lars Holger and his colleagues discovered a shirt 1,800 years old in a melting patch of ice. It happened on Lomseggen, a mountain in the south of the country. After the discovery, Lars and his team started wondering what else was hiding underneath centuries of cumulative ice. As it turned out, a whole lot. They started excavating the area and found traces of daily life going all the way back 2,000 years. Sleds, tools, horseshoes, and other everyday objects used by the Vikings that had been tossed aside and buried in snow. The objects date approximately from the year 300 to 1500, meaning this travel corridor through the mountain had been used until 500 years ago. It was likely walked by settlers and farmers, moving from one permanent winter settlement to another during the summer. As they moved through the mountain pass in large convoys, they left behind odds and ends that they didn't need anymore. Then, as snow collected over the years, these objects were perfectly preserved in the freezing cold. What's really interesting is that the artifacts have shown human activity on the pass started when climate conditions changed, allowing for easy travel across Norway. This led to a population boom, which helped the Vikings around the year 1000 with their raids across Europe. But then things changed again in the 1300s. The climate changed, the pass became frozen and impassable once more, and the Black Death wiped out many local villages. Then, for roughly 500 years, the pass was not used again. The Franklin Expedition mummies. In the Canadian Arctic, a Victorian seaman from a fabled lost expedition was found mummified in the ice. You've probably heard of the ill-fated Franklin expedition. Two ships set out from England with hopes of finding the Northwest Passage, the mysterious link from Europe to Asia. Instead, they got stuck in the ice, and all 134 men died. They were last spotted in Baffin Bay, July of 1845. The ships were lodged in the ice near King William Island, and after wintering there for 3 years, the men abandoned the ship in 1848. They were desperate to find civilization, and so they set off across the ice. They never made it to safety and slowly died from exposure and hunger, though not before resorting to cannibalism. In 1981, researchers with the University of Alberta began searching for the bones of the sailors. They found a small cemetery near where the ships had originally gotten stuck, with many of the human remains showing evidence they had resorted to eating their own dead. Then came the discovery of John Torrington. He died on January 1, 1846. This made him the first person to die from the expedition. He was buried in a coffin about 3 feet deep under frozen gravel. When the researchers finally managed to remove the lid of the coffin, they found John encased in a block of ice. They used warm water to thaw his remains, shocked to see he was in nearly the exact same condition as when he had died. The ice had kept him amazingly preserved, looking as though he had only been dead a few weeks. When they performed an autopsy, they found that John had suffered from tuberculosis and died from pneumonia. Cave bear. The remains of a cave bear from the Ice Age were discovered in the Russian permafrost, almost perfectly preserved. Because the body has been frozen in ice for tens of thousands of years, it barely decayed at all. While the effects of being frozen have left some minimal damage, the cave bear is otherwise totally intact. It's actually the very first cave bear scientists have ever found that still has soft tissue intact for them to study. The amazing discovery wasn't made by scientists, but rather a group of reindeer herders in Russia's far north that came across the preserved beast in the ice. Scientist Lena Grigorieva called it the first and only discovery of its kind. Cave bears have only been known by scientists up until now thanks to a few random bones discovered in Arctic regions. This is the only time a totally preserved specimen, still with its internal organs and even its nose, has been brought into a lab. Here's what we know about this mysterious bear so far. It is a prehistoric species that lived throughout Eurasia up until 15,000 years ago. This specific bear died sometime between 22,000 and 40,000 years before today, about 5,000 miles from modern-day Moscow. Scientists are still working to preserve its DNA. Maybe in the future, when scientists finally figure out how to bring back the woolly mammoth, the cave bear will be next. Ancient tools. In the year 2000, archaeologist Tom Andrews began putting together satellite imagery of the Mackenzie Mountains. This is a massive mountain range in the Canadian North that marks the border between the Yukon and the Northwest Territories. Tom knew that there was something here, something probably buried under the ice. In 2005, he managed to raise enough money to take himself and a group of investigators by helicopter to investigate a pair of ice patches. There, they discovered some extraordinary things. A squirrel snare from 1,000 years ago used for catching tiny animals, bows and arrows from 850 years ago, and spear-throwing tools nearly 2,400 years old. Tom described the tools as truly amazing. They were used by ancient hunters living in the frozen wasteland for hunting caribou and small game. These were Native American hunters whose ancestors arrived in North America over 10,000 years ago. They lived throughout the Canadian North, in regions people no longer live in today. But what's truly amazing is that the researchers only found a handful of items. There are undoubtedly thousands upon thousands more hidden underneath the Canadian ice. There may even be entire settlements here that have remained hidden and undiscovered because they are too far in the middle of nowhere and still under countless feet of ice. Frozen Russian ghost town. There is a place in Russia that has been abandoned under layers of snow and ice for the past decade. It's an isolated suburb belonging to the coal mining town of Vorkuta, 11 miles away. Temperatures in the region can drop to an unimaginable -58 degrees Fahrenheit. When winter comes, snow buries every building in the city, and ice creeps through the forgotten hallways. In 2013, a lack of jobs caused the few remaining families here to uproot their lives and move away. Without people to maintain the buildings, the whole place has become a post-apocalyptic funland. Snow blows in through broken windows and fills the stairwells of apartment buildings. Everything is covered in ice, and the whole place looks like a set from an apocalyptic movie. Of course, the town does thaw during the summer, but the ice is doing quite a bit of damage to the infrastructure, and it's all slowly breaking down. In a few years, the entire suburb will be a ruin of icy blocks of stone. Do you find abandoned towns like Vorkuta beautiful or eerie? Let me know in the comments below. Antarctic shells. Researchers recently discovered some seashells in the frozen wasteland of Antarctica. When they analyzed the calcium isotopes of fossilized snail shells, as well as some fossilized clams, they found them to be millions of years old, around 66 million years to be exact, just before the dinosaurs went extinct. But the frozen shells revealed something shocking. The research team from Northwestern University found that it may not have been solely an asteroid which killed off all the dinosaurs, but also a spike in global CO2 levels. Yes, the asteroid was definitely the final nail in the coffin. However, the dinosaurs had been on their way to extinction anyway. At least that's what this group of scientists is saying. When they analyzed the ancient shells, they found evidence of a huge carbon dioxide influx. This had undoubtedly caused the ocean to become more acidic, while the climate became wildly unstable. We don't know for sure what would have happened to the dinosaurs if the asteroid never hit, but according to the data from the shells, it probably wouldn't have been very good. The Juliet Delta 321 cargo plane. On December 4, 1971, a Lockheed LC-130 used by the U.S. Antarctic program took off on a mission. The cargo aircraft's call sign was Juliet Delta 321, and she was to ferry supplies to bases across Antarctica. But after the aircraft resupplied an isolated scientific team in the east, it experienced a malfunction. The plane crashed into the ice, the landing gear collapsed and was ruined, and the vehicle was utterly destroyed. Thankfully, nobody died. The few crew members were rescued shortly after, but the aircraft was unsalvageable. There was nothing anyone could do except strip it of its most valuable components and leave it to slowly be buried under the snow. This wasn't the only plane that crashed and was abandoned in Antarctica. It happened to two other LC-130 planes in the 70s, though these ones ended up being salvaged. It wasn't until 1986, 15 years later, that a team of experts went to the crash site of the Juliet Delta and spent 5 days digging her out. She had already been buried under 20 feet of compacted snow and ice. It took a lot of work, but the Juliet Delta was eventually pulled from her icy grave, repaired, and actually put back in the air. Somewhat ironically, another LC-130 was lost during the salvage operation. Do you think it was worthwhile to send a team to recover the Juliet Delta? Let me know in the comments below. Ice Age Kittens. In the remote Yakutia region of Russia, a pair of Ice Age kittens were dug out of the permafrost. These kittens died about 30,000 years ago and were a lot more vicious than any kittens you've probably had experience with. These were the babies of a cave lion, a beast that could rival any large cat still in existence. Cave lions were fierce and wonderful apex predators that lived during the days of the mammoth and the saber-toothed cats. The lion cubs were revealed to the world in 2015. Ever since, scientists have been trying to learn more about them. What we know so far is that Uyan and Dina, as they've been named, died before they were even able to open their eyes, and before their baby teeth had started to grow. Japanese scientists recently performed a tomography scan to look at the interior of their stomachs. They should have found at least milk, but instead there was nothing. Their stomachs were empty. This means the cave kittens died before they even had a chance to taste their mother's milk. It's now believed they only survived for 1 or 2 days. Sadly, this case gets more and more tragic. Based on where they were found, as well as soil discovered in their digestive tracts, it's believed they died when their den suddenly collapsed. The mother had probably given birth, went to get some food, and their cave dwelling fell in on itself. The poor cubs were killed immediately, then preserved under the frozen earth until just a few years ago. A lost world. A series of gigantic structures have been discovered buried underneath the Antarctic ice cap. The mysterious structures are frozen under roughly half a mile of incredibly thick ice. These are some pretty big structures too, with some of them being as tall as the Eiffel Tower. Now here's where the discovery gets a little crazy. Mainstream scientists are fairly certain that what they discovered are simple geological formations. A team of scientists from Belgium says these structures are ridges of sediment beneath the Antarctic ice sheet, part of a large network of tunnels and small mountains. In other words, completely natural. The giant land masses actually help keep the ice stable above. On the other hand, conspiracy theorists are convinced this is about an alien city. There are some who say, although there is no evidence to prove it, these structures are man-made or alien-made. These people believe someone or something built a great city on Antarctica before there was any ice. But for some unknown reason, the people or aliens vanished. When the Ice Age came, their city was buried, and all traces of their culture erased. These conspiracy theorists claim that if we dig half a mile down, we will find real archaeological evidence of a lost civilization. Do you really think there's a lost world hidden underneath Antarctica? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And thanks for watching! Remember to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Bye!